Sarah.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good. Got distracted by my email.
That's okay. I know how it goes.
We have 33 people signed up today, so
Oh my, that's exciting.
quite the turnout. Yeah.
Good. And you can hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay, sounds
Nice
good.
and clear.
Good. I may dive off intermittently just because still recovering from this rather disgusting cold. So in an effort to not blast everyone's eardrums, I may mute myself, cough, and then return.
That seems perfectly reasonable to me.
Okay. All right, so I'm just gonna see.
Practice sharing your screen.
Yeah. Let's see if this is going to come up the way I want it to. Yeah, the only challenge is I don't have my notes. So.
This is why I want to make sure you guys get paid. Oh, no.
I usually
file up here now.
print mine.
She said sometimes they do things like this.
Okay.
You can also, I think, maybe make it, when I'm doing it, I can make it smaller.
You don't speak on there or anything like that.
Okay.
It's actually pretty sharp.
So right now, Sarah, you can see my slide, right?
Yep.
Okay. So then if I go.
You have a really disgusting look on your face.
Now I can see your notes and your slide.
Okay. I actually may hook up to this secondary screen because I think I can run it off of the secondary screen and it shouldn't take too long. So give me just a second.
Yeah, no problem.
You have my list of things I'm supposed to do. It has already started. It's not supposed to have started until 10:30.
We're on right now, but we're not actually starting it. We'll start in 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Good to go.
Great. Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name's Sarah Monson. I'm the Education Communication Director at the Sierra Nevada Alliance. Thank you for being with us today for our social media, Harnessing the Power of this Important Influencer webinar, brought to you by Sierra Climate Adaptation and Mitigation Partnership and the Sierra Nevada Alliance. Today's webinar will be presented to you by Simone Cordery-Cotter. Simone is a brand storyteller with a background in marketing and visual arts. While working for a marketing agency, she led the development of public engagement efforts for Fort Collins Climate Action Plan and led the community's strategy for Fort Zed, an experimental zero energy district. She most recently acted as the public relations director for an endurance sports company where she implemented several innovative social media strategies, including an influencer program and e-commerce integration. Her marketing experience runs the gamut from working with the trampoline parks to community theaters and local governments. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Simone.
Thanks, Sarah. All right. Sarah, how's my audio?
You're great.
Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna stop my video, and it's not because I don't want you guys to look at me, it's just because I don't want to look at myself. Hi everybody, my name is Simone. I am currently a climate fellow with the Civic Spark program based out of the Sierra Business Council office here in Truckee, California. Sarah was kind enough to ask if I would be willing to talk a little bit about social media, and I'm thrilled to be here, so thank you. And hi, so just a little background on me. I have 5 years of marketing experience in the nonprofit and the for-profit sector. My background is in video production and photography. When I was working for a marketing agency, I implemented the development of a public outreach plan and an interactive website development for the City of Fort Collins Climate Action Plan, and also worked with the Fort Zed Steering Committee on their public outreach strategy in order to engage community members and increase community awareness of the program. And then for the past 2 years, I was the public relations director for Read Project North America, and joined the Civic Spark program for a change of scene and to get a little bit more experience in the environmental field. So I'm really happy to be here. So the starting point with social media, a lot of you filled out our pre-webinar survey, and I really appreciate that. It gave me a little bit of insight into who you guys were and what you needed as far as social media goes. So I think the basis for social media and where we'll start today is that you need to know your organization and your organization's voice. This determines the content that you share and write and how you respond to people who interact with you on social media, whether that's responding to comments, direct messages, posts on your pages. An excellent place to start, if you need, is your organization's mission and vision. You can also stock other organizations' profiles, which is an excellent way to get ideas and get strategies. And you can write down what you think or feel when you look at their social media. So, for example, if you're researching a competitor or an organization whose social media you want to emulate, look at their social media, look at all of their platforms, think about how you react when you look at their content. And those keywords can range anywhere from authentic, picturesque, quality, responsibility, adventurous, service-oriented, the list goes on. But I would advise you to pick 3 or 4 and keep them as your cornerstones, because consistency is key on social media, both in voice and in posting. So in knowing yourself, you also need to know your audience. So you need to know your organization, and you need to know the audience that your organization is attempting to reach. Knowing your organization will better inform your knowledge about who follows you on social media and who you want to follow you on social media, especially if your organization is wanting to grow or wanting to pivot. You need to know who currently follows you on social media and what content is going to resonate with them, and who you want to follow on social media in order to determine what kind of content you're going to post in order to draw that audience in. So for example, if you want socially engaged 20-somethings with disposable income to follow you and donate to your organization, that's going to inform the platform that you post to and what kind of content you share to that platform. So if you want baby boomers with a lot of free time to engage and volunteer with your organization, you're going to be far better off posting a call to action and a call for engagement on Facebook via a photo and a written post than you would be by posting a video on Snapchat. And part of that is just knowing your platform, knowing your audiences on the platform, and understanding your demographics. So if you have to take time, I would encourage you to take time and research that and think very critically about who you want to reach, how you want to reach them, and what you want them to do. So having that is very important when you start to think about your social media strategy and how you're engaging. So ask yourself and your management team, who are we trying to reach? What are we trying to get them to do? And one thing that I can do after the webinar is send out a workbook that informs this process really nicely. It's a really gorgeous workbook from HubSpot, and that actually helps you build out personas. So those of you who have a marketing background know what I'm talking about when I talk about buyer personas. It's the same with nonprofit and governmental agencies. You're not necessarily selling a product, but you're still trying to get people to do something, whether it's purchase or donate or show up to a meeting or write a letter. And that workbook is very helpful as far as building out that persona. The next step when you start thinking about your social media strategy is to set goals. You need goals for your social media. If you're there just to be there, and I speak from experience, if you're there just to be there, nothing is going to depress you more than opening up Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, because you're going to open up those platforms and it's going to be a big sigh and you're going to think, what am I doing here? Because you're not working towards a goal. You're just throwing material out into the void, hoping that something sticks. So that lack of direction, and the reason I am placing a lot of emphasis on direction and planning, is because A lack of direction is a recipe for disengaged social media presence, which is just as bad as not being there. It's like going to a dinner party, staring at your phone the whole time and not talking to anyone. You may as well not even be there. Social media, as I'm sure you've heard over and over again, is a conversation. So if you are not there, if you're there just to blast things out and not hear anything back, you would be far better off purchasing a billboard rather than engaging on social media. So keep in mind when you start thinking about your marketing, when you're thinking about your marketing mix and where social media fits into it and your communications mix, keep in mind that social media is that it's that conversation, which makes it incredibly valuable and allows you to create some really engaged evangelical followers. But remember, there's a give and take for that. Set measurable goals so that you know when you achieve them, or just importantly, when you do not achieve them, which happens, it's okay. And by measurable goals, I mean not we want to increase our Facebook following. That's a very nebulous, non-quantifiable goal. The goal, a quantifiable, measurable goal would be we want to increase our Facebook following to 3,000 people, up from 1,500. So that's a measurable goal. And you're going to be able to track your progress towards that goal. And that's going to make a lot more sense. The beautiful and terrible thing about social media is that it's all about attention spans, which are not long, as we know. So you may try something and it may flop. But the good news is that tomorrow's another chance to try something new. If you do have a success on social media, you can replicate the successful components, turn it around, capitalize on another success metric really quickly. So for example, if you're doing a call to action for followers to sign a petition and you post it to Facebook and Twitter with this beautiful scenic photo and an impassioned 100-word plea and no one signs it after a day, you can easily pull it down, try a different photograph, shorten your copy, throw it back up. And you can even test different images with paid placements on Facebook and Instagram. And that paid platform gives you a relevance score, which will give you a good idea as to what image is testing best. So I highly encourage you to test different copy, different images, and see what's resonating and what's successful. So we're talking a lot about platforms. One of the requests from our pre-webinar survey was sort of tactical how-tos on platforms. An hour and a half is not long enough for me to get into the tactical how-tos, as in how to run a Facebook Live video or how to post an Instagram story and turn it into Instagram highlights. Unfortunately, there's just not enough time for that in this webinar, and I wanted to keep it relatively high level and keep it really valuable for everyone. But I can make a couple industry recommendations as far as platform choices and how the platform of choice aligns with your goals and whether or not you want to be on that platform. And I will be the first person to give you permission to stay off of a platform. Not everybody needs a YouTube channel. Not everybody needs an Instagram profile. Not everybody needs a Twitter profile. And it's okay. It's okay if you're not present on all of those. I would far rather see an organization put a lot of effort into performing really well on 2 to 3 platforms than put a half-hearted effort into performing passively on 6 different platforms. So just as a starting point, Facebook is sort of the granddaddy as far as posting. Industry standard for we'll go with nonprofit just because I understand that that's the majority of our attendance today. Nonprofit or governmental organizations, minimum of 3 times per week, max two times per day. Your engagement really starts to drop off after 2 times a day. If you're not posting around 3 times a week, people are going to forget you and they're going to forget that you're relevant, and that's going to negatively impact your algorithm, and people aren't going to engage. Target markets on Facebook are going to be millennials and Gen Xers. Facebook does tend to trend slightly older. So if you're after sort of the sub 21 demographic, Facebook's not necessarily going to be terribly successful at reaching those. I would even hazard to say under 30, Facebook is starting to lose a number of their audience in that age demo. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about who you're trying to reach. Twitter, minimum of 5 times per day. Twitter is a high volume, low value platform. So if you're on it and you're using it, fantastic. It's got a very broad age reach. It was interested to see that 10% of their user base is 65 years or older, which when you start thinking about who you want to reach and how you want to engage with them, Twitter can be really valuable, especially if you are political and wanting to become engaged in political conversations. If you don't necessarily want to dive straight into controversy, but you still want to have conversations, Twitter is fantastic for activating on grassroots organizations and activism. It's also fantastic for live tweeting a community workshop, for example, or continuing to share out snippets of digestible content. Keep in mind, Twitter doubled their character limit. It used to be 140 characters, now it's 280. So that has both its advantages and disadvantages. Instagram, your recommended frequency to post depends on your goal. If you're trying to grow your followership, I would recommend more frequent rather than less frequent. You can probably post to Instagram up to once or twice a day. Once a day is probably fine. Plus, Instagram has changed over the past couple of years. It's very interesting. On your feed, your semi-permanent content, that is going to be really high value, high quality content. On your stories can be a little bit lower quality. Your stories can lend themselves more to that live content. For example, streaming a live workshop, or let's see, I'm trying to think of another example where you might use it. Streaming an event that's going on, or if you're having an interview with somebody very interesting and you just want to toss out a couple quick snippets on your Instagram stories. Keep in mind those Instagram stories only live for, I think it's 24 hours. Those Instagram stories only live for 24 hours. So if you want to keep them, you can always add them to your highlights. 60% of the users on Instagram are under the age of 30, which makes it really, really valuable if you're trying to engage younger people. It tends to trend very young. And keep in mind that with this younger demographic comes a very savvy and digitally savvy audience. So keep in mind that your content needs to be quality, and it needs to be ready to come to the table. Oh, Snapchat. Snapchat is interesting as far as social media platforms go. Your frequency depends on your strategy. I would recommend, if you're really trying to grow an audience on Snapchat, minimum you need to post daily. There are I'll send out a case study. There's a couple interesting case studies about political members of the legislature using Snapchat, which is actually truly fascinating to me, because it does tend to vibe towards a slightly less serious content. It seems to be a bit ephemeral, if you will. It trends really young, a lot of teens, a lot of under 30, and it's going to be very difficult to find somebody over the age of 45 or 50 on Snapchat and actually using it. So Snapchat is a whole nother discussion. I'm happy to send out the case study afterward. If you are going to use it and you have a very clear goal in mind, it can be fantastic. Paid advertising on Snapchat is nauseatingly expensive. So if you've got a bunch of money to throw around and you really want to make a big splash, it's definitely an avenue to go toward. And it's really exciting seeing what some brands are doing on there. YouTube, if you have a YouTube channel, I'd recommend posting 2 times per week. Sometimes YouTube can also just be a repository for hosted videos. That's okay. And it'll be skipping ahead. YouTube will be a lot of very middle of the road demographics. So 18 to 49, that's 60% of their audience, and it's valuable. Video content is not going away. It's prevalent and important. So if you are not incorporating video content into what you're doing, we can discuss a couple of ways to implement that into your social media mix. LinkedIn, recommend posting 1 time per week. Keep in mind that this trend's older, it trends professional. It also trends towards really, really high earners. I want to say over a quarter of the members on LinkedIn earn over $100,000 a year. So if you're kind of eyeballing that professional networking, keep in mind it's a professional network. People like to keep it very educational. So that's important to keep in mind. Educational, professional. It is basically sort of the antithesis of Snapchat. Content on LinkedIn tends to be very evergreen content. And I say that, I mean, evergreen content is something that you can refer to over and over again. Content is king, but distribution is queen, and she wears the pants. We cannot talk about social media without talking about content, which is why we're talking about it right now. Social media runs on content. When you think about content, you need to think about where it's going to live and how it's going to be experienced. That means that the same content can be reimagined and distributed strategically on several different platforms. We'll go into a couple examples of that. Excuse me. But for now, I want to just pause for a minute, and I would like to take any questions.
Simone, this is Sarah. I have a question.
Yes, Sarah.
So we currently use Twitter. However, I'm posting on Twitter as often as I am on Facebook and Instagram.
Okay.
Is it worth having? I mean, we currently do have followers, but if I'm not producing that large amount of content, is it worth keeping it?
I would say yes. And the reason I say that is because there's a lot of conversations that can happen on Twitter. Twitter also uses hashtags pretty heavily. It's a really great way to find other content as well. So when I talk about posting 5 times a day, that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to write a blog post 5 times a day. A post on Twitter can easily be a retweet of a partner organization sharing out content, as long as it's in line with your brand voice and your brand goals. And we'll talk a little bit more later about the content mix and how much of it needs to be your own produced versus what can be reshared. But I would say yes. I think it's absolutely worth it. I would just think very hard about why you want to be on there and what you're trying to do. So is it a news distribution tool for you? And if so, are you seeing return on that? And if not, how can you maximize the return on that? Does that make sense, Sarah?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
We have a chat question from Dana. She hopped on a little late, and she was wondering if you could switch back quickly to the slide with information on Instagram and how often to post.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for everyone else, I muted you, but you can unmute yourself if you have a question.
So I'll just reiterate. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, why don't you go ahead and do this question? I'll ask after.
I was just going to add for Dana, for Instagram, your frequency is going to depend on your goal. If you are trying to grow your audience more frequent, so once a day, maybe twice a day, it's definitely the way to go. Definitely going to recommend heavily loading hashtags and tagging other organizations in your post captions or in your photos. A lot of people are going to find you through hashtags and through the hashtag search feature on Instagram. So if you're trying to grow that followership, post on Instagram. Where'd my other question go?
Hi, Simone. This is Lizzie. Sorry for interrupting there.
Hi, Lizzie.
Hi. So I was wondering, I know that you said most of the people on here are nonprofit, but from local government, I know Nextdoor is a huge social media tool that we're using, and I was just wondering if you have any experience with that, and then any tips similar to these Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram tips.
As far as Nextdoor goes?
Yeah.
My experience on Nextdoor is pretty limited. I do know that you need to your Nextdoor is tricky because I think you need to be a verified resident of the neighborhood in order to be participating on the network. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. I think
Okay.
we are, as a local government, on there, I'm pretty sure.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I think it's really valuable. I think my caution with Nextdoor is that don't overdo it. Make sure that the content is relevant to your audience. So something that is highly informative, highly targeted towards your audience is going to be really valuable. If you start posting too frequently, I'm thinking more than a couple times a week, that's going to really start to look spammy and you're going to lose credibility. I feel like it's really easy to lose credibility on Nextdoor because it is an insular social network. So my recommendation would be to tread with caution and make sure that that whatever you're posting is informative and relevant. Does that answer your question, Lizzie?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Alrighty, I will scooch ahead then. There'll be a couple more opportunities for questions as well. I know I'm kind of zipping through this, but I also wanted to leave space for us to chat as well. So an example of content that we can talk about how to distribute on multiple platforms is just an example that was kind of being kicked around our office here at Sierra Business Council. We wanted to do a blog post on biomass frequently asked questions. Biomass is a little bit misunderstood, and there are a couple legislative initiatives coming down the pipe that would benefit from public education. So we wanted to write a blog about biomass, and the goal was to educate community members on frequently misunderstood aspects of biomass and inform on the triple bottom line benefits. So that informs our content and what our content's going to be about. Our metrics were that we wanted the total reach to exceed 5,000 people. I would almost go as far as to say we want the total reach to exceed 5,000 people over the course of 14 days, because I can get anything to reach 5,000 people over the course of 365 days. It just means that it's not going to be very effective. So I would go so far as to put an actual timeline on that as well. So this is kind of this is an example, and I'll leave this slide up for a bit. This is an example of how one content idea can spread into a couple different ways to execute, and where it can be shared. So we're thinking about this FAQ blog on biomass. Then from that, we want to think about what other platforms are going to want content and what format is going to work best. So we've got Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. We want to so what we kind of thought about was we've got a blog post, so that's written by a subject matter expert and local personality, somebody who has credibility. I don't sound very credible writing about biomass, but for example, our president, Steve Frisch, does sound very credible writing about biomass. From there, we can take snippets. So let's say he's got 5 FAQs that he's exploring. From there, we can take snippets from that blog post and superimpose the text over forest images so that the visual connection to biomass is very clear. So an FAQ, for example, could be how much biomass is currently in Sierra Nevada forests, and then we could do a quick answer. Currently, there are X million tons of biomass that could be removed from Sierra Nevada forests. So that is a short piece of content. It's visual. It can be posted on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and there can be a link in the Twitter post to read the blog. There can be a link in the Instagram profile bio to go to the website, and there can be a link on the Facebook post to go read the blog as well. But something like that that's visual is going to draw people in. Then from there, we also had this kind of idea, what if we asked people questions about biomass, just to kind of demonstrate some of the common misunderstandings that are out there about biomass. For example, I was talking to a friend of mine about biomass, and they were like, oh, biomass plants stink. And I was like, really? Why do you think that? And they go, oh, because biomass is manure, right? It's poo. And I was like, well, no, not really. But it's interesting that you think that. So from there, the long form video can go live on YouTube. can be 1 to 2 minutes in length. And then we can pull highlights, very similar to how we pull highlights from the blog. We can pull highlights from that video in 60 seconds, or excuse me, in like 30-second or less snippets, and post those on Instagram. Remember, Instagram does photos and video. So you can kind of see how we've covered YouTube. We can post the video on Facebook. Just a quick hack. Facebook is really, really trying to push becoming a video platform. They're kind of trying to edge out YouTube. So if you are going to post a video, post it on YouTube. The beautiful thing about YouTube is that you can host it on YouTube. You can embed it in a blog, and you can post the short link on Twitter. But if you are posting a video, if you want the video to live on Facebook, post it natively to Facebook. That means upload it through Facebook's video uploader. Don't post the YouTube link. And I can clarify that if anyone has any questions on that. The reason is because Facebook is very, very favorable towards video content, and that algorithm is going to bump your video content up just a little bit, and you're going to be able to see what the views are on that. So then out of all of this, there are a lot of different ways for this content to be shared out. And so what we've done is we've turned one idea, education on biomass, into multiple content pieces that can have a lifespan over the course of a 14-day or 30-day campaign. And then, of course, don't forget our metrics were total reach to exceed 5,000. So as far as reach goes, we're looking at website traffic, how many people landed on the blog post page, social media reach, how many people our posts reached, and then we can also look at video views. So all of those numbers are going to inform whether or not we've reached our goal. So if we do reach our goal, fantastic. Let's dig into those numbers a little bit more and see where we got the most engagement. Did we get the most engagement on Instagram? Did we get the most engagement when we posted text over photos versus no text over photos and just straight photos? Did we get the most engagement on the short video? Did we get, 300 views on the short videos and 50 on the long video? Maybe that informs our next strategy. We make shorter videos. So there is this iterative approach, and that is going to inform what you do next. So content ideation, how did we come up with this? How do we get there? So remember why people are on social media. They're there to be informed, they're there to be entertained, and they're there to be connected. If your content does one of those things, fantastic. If it does two of those things, even better. If it does all three, it's a big swing, and it's either going to sail wonderfully or it's going to go less than smoothly, and that's not a bad thing. You can learn from that. Keep in mind when you're brainstorming, what is your goal, who is your audience, and what is going to resonate with them. So we're talking a lot about posting content, and I want to take the pressure off of everybody and remind you that you single-handedly, or your agency single-handedly, doesn't have to produce all of this. You can share. There's a lot of content out there that you can share. 50% of your content is going to be revolving around the keywords that you chose earlier. Remember, we talked about choosing those keywords that you want your social media experience to evoke. So whether you've produced it yourselves or you're sharing it from other organizations, for example, the fourth climate assessment regional report, you can very easily pull highlights out of that, pull sidebars out of that, and turn those into tweets. So something like that can very easily, you didn't produce it, but you can repackage it and share it on social media. And as long as it's in line with your mission, let's go with your mission is to inform on climate change and climate change data. That's going to align really nicely with your mission. So the 50% of your content mix is your meat and potatoes. This is the soft sell content that tells people about your mission and values. These are the serious conversation drivers. 25% of your content can be heavily, heavily branded and serious asks. So, for example, I'm talking about fundraiser drives, encouraging followers to join mailing lists, tooting your own horn, like an award that your organization just won, there's going to be a lot less of conversation around this content. Keep in mind that heavily branded stuff is going to be more megaphone rather than conversation, which is fine. It can be part of the mix. It just can't be predominant. The final 25% is the fluff, literal or figurative, like sharing an image of the office dog dressed up on Halloween, or a video from the dodo, for example, on Facebook. This is content that's only peripherally connected to your organization. So I'm thinking of an example. If you're talking about climate change in the Sierra Nevada, there was a peripheral article about a mountain lion that survived the Woolsey fire. Only I think it perished in the Camp Fire. So that's peripheral. It's interesting, and it's probably going to get an emotional response out of people. It doesn't necessarily inform as far as like heavy hard hitting goes, and it doesn't necessarily address your end goals as an organization, to gain emails or to gain followers. But it's definitely going to generate a conversation. So keep in mind, these ratios are not hard and fast. These are just guidelines. You can use the data that you get from your social media networks to guide a more informed strategy. And you may find that this ratio shifts for you. And that's totally fine. Keep in mind that, when we talk about producing your own content versus sharing, there are a lot of brands that don't produce much of their own content, but they share a ton of content. So for example, I was just talking about an example this morning. North Star's park, their ski park, has their own Instagram. They don't produce a lot of their own content. People actually tag them in a ton of stuff because they're in the park doing crazy stuff, posting it on Instagram and Facebook, and they can just share that, and that's okay. It's okay for you to share out content that others have produced, as long as you are constructing the context and the narrative that goes around it, because that's what's going to inform your end goals. So how do we get there? How do we think about what to post, what to write, what photos to take? These are just a couple places to start. I highly encourage you to take time, look at other brands and profiles, even outside of your industry. So if you're, in the local government space, you can still take a page out of Nike's playbook. It's okay. If you are in the nonprofit space, you can absolutely look at what for-profit businesses are doing, and learn from them. What's successful for them. I highly encourage everyone. Maybe you can you can tell your boss that I told you to do this. Get lost on YouTube for 15 minutes, and you might be kind of interested in what you find. Poke around on Reddit, especially subreddits. On Reddit, there are actually a lot of educational subreddits. On Reddit, you can poke around on there, see what content and information is resonating with people on those. You might find an article where you're like, wow, I really want to share this on social media. Your inbox is another great place to look for content to share or tweet. So, I know a lot of you probably get Climate Forward in your inbox from the New York Times. Those kind of articles are easy to just drop in a Twitter post out first thing in the morning. And that's it's interesting. It's something that people are going to want to read. Borrow someone else's phone, scroll through their feed, see how they view social media, and what they're following and what they're interested in. Come up with your worst ideas first. This is a really nice brainstorming tactic that we used to do at the marketing agency that I worked for. We would come up with the worst possible ideas and what we definitely didn't want to do. And then from there, we actually would get some semi-decent ideas. So that's fine. If the first round is terrible ideas, it's great. Keep going. Look at Pinterest for visual trends. Pinterest is highly visual. I haven't covered it very much in here, but I'm happy to answer questions about it. Check out Vimeo staff picks for storytelling. This is all video-driven storytelling. So for some video, excitement, Vimeo's staff picks are fantastic to look at. Kind of along the lines of getting lost on YouTube. You can poll friends and staff friends or staff groups of people that aren't involved in marketing and communications. What would you be interested to see on social media? What do you want to learn from our organization? What do you think we can address on social media that we have not? What are questions that your front desk is getting? And maybe you could write a blog post on that. If you're SmackMD during the campfire and you're getting 30 bajillion phone calls a day about whether or not it's safe to go outside, I think it's worthwhile to write a blog about that, maybe do a Facebook Live post about it, maybe do a Facebook Live video about it, and tweet constantly. Don't go outside. Not encouraging people to go outside at the moment. So something like that can be really valuable. You can flip through a magazine, scroll through the blog of a brand that you love, or also turn on your local radio station, especially if you're regional. What are people talking about? Are they talking about the ski season? Are they talking about the holiday? Are they talking about a city council meeting that just went down? What are people talking about, and what are they interested in? So I'm going to pause again for any questions. I think I saw a question come through on chat. Sarah, are you able to look at that?
Yeah, I can read that for you.
Okay, great.
So this is from Rachel Aquino. What tools do you recommend in organizing all of your platforms, keeping up with a social media calendar? Are there some that are low cost to invest in and to keep everything in one place?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a slide at the end dedicated to this, but I cannot recommend Sprout Social enough. If you sign up for a year with them, I think it drops down to 75 or 80 a month for 12 months. Sprout Social is fantastic. You can schedule posts out. They have a smart share feature. If you're trying to fill in the gaps in your social media calendar, what Sprout Social does is it will actually recommend a time for you to post to maximize your engagement. You can also plug an RSS feed reader, directly into Sprout. So for example, New York Times, LA Times, Sacramento Bee, they all have RSS reader. You can plug them into an RSS reader like Feedly. You get Feedly plugged into Sprout Social, and from within the Sprout Social dashboard, you can actually share out those articles and write a post around them without even having to go into Facebook or Twitter, Instagram. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be posting natively from those platforms. There's value in visiting the platforms and experiencing them natively. But as far as a lot of the heavy lifting, it can be done through Sprout Social. A couple others are Buffer. I'm not sure what the pricing structure on Buffer is. Another good one is Hootsuite. And all of those programs, you can do either a 30 or a 90-day free trial. You can try it out and try features and kind of, test and compare. And I can send out a list of those after our conversation here as well.
Cool, thanks, Smith.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right. I only have about 7 slides left. So one of the questions that I got was about encouraging activism. Encouraging activism via social media is very similar to getting people to buy something. You want them to take action. Remember that it takes time to get people to take action. People need to see an ad on Facebook, for example, an average of 8 times before they click on it or take action. So make sure that you know what you want them to do. Do you want them to, is your activism is it submitting an email address? Is it getting your follower to write a letter? Is it getting your follower to send a text message to an elected official? Is it getting your follower to repost something? The key is warming them up with education and then and continuing to elicit those emotional connections. Don't be afraid of humor and don't be afraid to take it offline as well into the real world via meetups, rallies, and workshops. So you can kind of see in this lovely influence loop that we have, you'll see this in marketing spheres. You'll see this in a lot of different shapes. You can either see it as an influence loop. Sometimes it's a sales funnel. More recently, it's just become like a big mashed up flow chart because this process of getting a follower to engage on a call to action is not linear in any way, shape, or form anymore. And anyone who tells you so is lying. So your number one, you'll see our number one down here, formulation. That's you as a brand coming up with something that you want somebody to do. So you're going to introduce them. You're going to introduce them to the concept. That's awareness. Consideration, that emotional connection is going to make them think about it. Then you're into the pre-commerce / pre-action / pre-activism stage. Evaluation, they're going to weigh the pros and cons of doing it, whether or not that's, oh, I don't know if I have time to do that. This seems like a time sink, or, got to check my schedule. And then through that, they're going to ask questions. So they're going to engage. They may engage with you directly. They may visit an expert on the subject. For example, if you're trying to get somebody to vote a certain way, if you're encouraging people to vote a certain way, chances are my hope is that they're going to ask a subject matter, they're going to ask their parents about it. They're going to ask a friend about it. They're going to Google it and see what newspapers have to say about it. They're going to talk about it over a pint. And then you move into commerce. And that's where, for us, it's activism and it's the actual taking of the action. Hopefully the evaluation stage has gone well, and whatever you can do to inform that evaluation stage is going to be key. So that's kind of where your blog posts and your long form video come in. They're going to go for it. They're going to make the shift. They're going to take the action. And then don't forget that after that, there's experience, loyalty, and advocating. So you really want to make sure that if you are trying to get them to take an action, you want it to be as frictionless as possible. You want to make sure that the experience is positive for them, because we know how quickly negative experiences on social media can blow up. And then whatever you can do to maximize that, remind them that their advocacy is valuable. And that's where you truly get an advocate, where you get a loyalist. It's a process. I'm not saying that this is going to go quickly. Excuse me. Do it. You have to do it over and over and over and over and over again. Emotional connections all throughout it are key. And like I said earlier, don't be afraid to take it offline. So if that means that you text people, if that means that you call people, if that means that you get people to come to an event at a brewery, it's fine. It's fine to take it offline. It doesn't all need to happen on social media. So I just wanted to, I know it's helpful to see examples when we start talking about social media. And I especially wanted to pull from a couple mission-driven nonprofit organizations. Charity Water, if you don't already follow them, if you're not already aware of them, I highly recommend that you follow them, especially on Instagram, because they crush it. They went through, back in 2013, they had a campaign where they wanted to raise $10,000 over a 24-hour period. So what they did is they went bonkers on social media for 24 hours, posting on all their platforms. And what they were doing is they were encouraging people to purchase seats at Google Hangouts experiences that they hosted with entrepreneurs and influencers. So I want to say like Elon Musk, not Elon Musk, but somebody of the same vein was one of their like major draws. I think Seth Godin was part of it as well. And what they also did is they had a 24-hour period, so they had some urgency to it. So creating urgency on social media is key. Remember those short attention spans. Creating urgency and making the call to action sweet and short is vital as well. So what Charity Water ended up doing was they sold those Google Hangout seats over a 24-hour period and were able to raise that $10,000. UNICEF is another example of an organization that is very highly engaged on social media. They say on their Facebook page, like us on Facebook, and we'll vaccinate 0 children against polio. And it sounds a little counterintuitive, but it's eye-catching, and it stops and makes you think. And what that message for them is a reminder to their followers that talk is cheap. Liking on social media, shares are cheap. They actually want you to take action. And they're very good throughout all of their platforms. They're very dominant on Facebook. They're very good on all of their platforms for encouraging the urgency of the situation, making an emotional connection between your actions that you take to support them and their organization and how that impacts the people that they benefit. So I highly recommend you go and check their Facebook page out. Another example is this smaller nonprofit called Not Far From the Tree. They do, let's see, they're sort of like a food hub situation. They provide alternative food supply, or excuse me, alternative food supply chains, to certain areas. They raised $6,000 with a crowdfunding video. Keep in mind, video content, video. And they repeatedly communicated with their donors. They originally had a goal of 4,000, so they had a metric. They had a very measurable metric, and it was an attainable metric. And then they were able to exceed that. So they had that goal in mind and knew how they were going to get to it. I will touch on paid social media. I could do a whole nother hour and a half on paid social media days, in fact. But I'll just sort of touch on what I think are the highlights. I highly recommend Facebook and Instagram as a starting point for paid social media. You can do paid social media on LinkedIn. Keep in mind it is very expensive, upwards of $45 per action, where an action on Facebook and Instagram is going to run you anywhere between 35 cents to maybe $5 per action. Depends on what your conversion metric is and what the end goal is. The targeting data on Facebook and Instagram is very, very in-depth. They know everything about you. If you're on those platforms, you know this, and you know that you're getting stalked by their many, many ads. You can choose to target everything from men between the ages of 25 and 35 that like to ski in Tahoe, to people in the Bay Area with an interest in environmental efforts that make over $250,000 a year. So that targeting data is really key. And that means that your budget is going to be put to great use. If you're targeting people at work, I would recommend LinkedIn. Approach with caution and make sure you have a healthy budget when you're looking at LinkedIn. Your budget is going to depend on what action you want people to take and how many people you want to take that action. For example, getting more people to like your Facebook page is about 35 to 65 cents per action, depending on your demographic. But if you want people to engage in a lead generation campaign and submit their email for a political campaign, you're looking at something more like $1.75 to $5 per email. Those are really rough numbers that I'm pulling out of my experience and a couple other industry standards. There's a lot of data out there, so I highly encourage you to search around depending on the campaign you have in mind. I'm also happy to provide some guidance if you have specifics in mind. A note of caution to all when you start exploring this avenue. Make sure you review the advertising guidelines on your platform of choice very carefully, whether you're looking at YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Ads typically need to go through a review process. Facebook has been particularly finicky lately on boosted posts and paid content if it seems even vaguely political. So just exercise caution. Make sure you leave yourself time to adjust. Facebook also has rules about the amount of content around the amount of text that you're allowed to put on an image. So just pay attention to those posting regulations. Pay attention to something as minimal as like the sizing requirements. If you are going to invest in paid social media, it can be a huge return, but you have to have a budget. Depending on what you need to do, $10 to $50 isn't really going to be a budget. You have to have a budget that is comparable to the return that you want out of it. So if you want 5 people to come to a community meeting, $50 is probably not a bad budget. If you want 3 million people to vote a certain way on a ballot measure, you're going to need about 3 million, or at least, something comparable. So just keep that in mind. Better content means that your ad dollars go further. When I say that, I mean that something that is relevant to your key demographic is going to mean that your ad is more popular, and it's going to be easier / cheaper for Facebook, Instagram, for example, to put it in front of that target demographic. And then, making sure that you really, really know thyself and knowing thine audience is going to be important as far as targeting data goes to make sure that your ad dollars go even further. And then of course, test, adjust, repeat. It's very iterative. When I ran a 30-day Facebook campaign that was focused on clearing out clearance items on our sale page, and I checked in on it every day. Unfortunately, it's not one of those things that you can just set and forget. You've kind of got to eyeball it every day, or at least every other day, see how it's doing, and then adjust. I think I went through probably about 12 to 15 images before the end of the month, just because I really wanted to maximize the reaction for my audience members, and I really wanted to optimize my photography and content for the audience that was responding well. I'll also touch on managing conflict on social media, which is goes a little bit towards Lizzie's question about Nextdoor. Part of the nature of social media, the reason that you're on social media and not putting up a billboard, means that it's going to be conversational. Trolls are a thing. It's just important to know when to engage and when to just delete a comment or a thread. It's not uncommon for brands and organizations to have a social media code of conduct. It's actually very common. We wrote a couple for mental health organizations, which was really key. You can make that very well known, and you can block people. If it's a customer service issue, you need to take it off of the public forum as quickly as possible, resolve it, and then post the resolution. So for example, a negative review on Facebook about how your organization handled something, I highly recommend that you go straight to the source, talk directly to that person, either through direct message. I'm also a huge fan of emailing them or calling them directly. It's hard for people to get snippy with you over the phone most of the time. Resolve it directly and then ask them to remove the review or the post or update it. Not responding to those sorts of things is worse than responding in most cases. And it behooves you to maintain your social reputation. That being said, controversy on social media, especially around some of the topics that our organizations work on, controversy on social media is not a bad thing. It just needs to stay civil. And we know that can degrade rather quickly. But if there are followers having an argument over a post that you posted, that's not a bad thing. Somebody calling your organization out and saying, we disagree with this, or we dislike that you posted this, that's something different. So if it's directed at you as the organization, you have to respond. You don't need to get involved if there are two people sort of duking it out in the comments of a Facebook post about the fourth climate assessment. So yeah, and typically your organizations will have a communications director or a public relations person. And if that's not the person running your social media, of course, double check everything with them, and they're going to have some pretty good conflict resolution strategies for you. Here are just a couple tools, and Rachel, I can send you actual links as well. Sprout Social, I'm a huge fan of them. I used them for over a year when I was actually running not one but two different brands, and all of their social media platforms. HubSpot is a really fantastic repository of knowledge and content marketing guidance. Buffer is another social media manager, and I haven't used them recently. I know that they've been upgrading and working hard to be competitive with Sprout Social. As far as your visual elements go, Canva is a good graphic program. Pictograph, we have been using that at Sierra Business Council as well. It's really valuable. If you want to go ahead and go buy the Cadillac, I'd recommend Adobe's Creative Cloud. They do have student and nonprofit rates. That's industry standard. But if you don't have a dedicated graphic designer working in those programs, it's probably not going to be worth the expense for you. Where are we? Where do we need to go? And how do we get there? By David Burbidge. David Burbidge was a mentor of mine when I worked at the marketing agency. He was the marketing and sales lead for all of the Western locations of Subway sandwiches. a fantastically knowledgeable person. But before you go anywhere near social media or any marketing tactic for that reason, for that matter, think about where you are, think about where you want to go and how you need to get there. And you need to know who your audience is and who your organization is when you start to answer those questions. Don't be afraid to revisit this. So a couple takeaways. I highly encourage, remember when you're on social media, you need to create value. Remember why people are there. They're there for education, entertainment, and connection. When you make an ask, make it simple. Remember that those attention spans are short. Pics, it didn't happen. Social media is visual. Instagram is highly visual. YouTube is all visual. Facebook is all visual. Snapchat's all visual. Everyone has a camera on their phone. Portrait mode on your iPhone or your Pixel phone makes it even easier to look like a pro photographer. Get comfortable with using those tools if you're generating content for your organization. And remember that you can always, remember that you can share other content. If you're not a fantastic photographer, maybe someone that takes fantastic photos is willing to let you use them. I will encourage you all, be very, very careful reposting photographic content or just using something from a Google image search that is going out on a public forum. Remember that copyright laws are a thing, and it's very easy to become entangled in an argument with a photographer about whether or not you had the right to use that image. So always ask. Typically, you know, if it's a town council member that has snapped a photo of attendees in the council chambers, chances are they're going to be fine with you using it. Paul Nicklin is a photographer for National Geographic. He takes some truly gorgeous photos that are very evocative of climate change. And you'd better believe that he's going to get a bit sticky with you if you pilfer one of his photos and post it somewhere. Don't be afraid of failure. So try different things. Remember, test, reevaluate, test, reevaluate. Social media is this wonderful flowing river of people and their reactions and their things. So chances are if you do flop, people are going to forget about it in a couple days. Pepsi flopped massively when they made a commercial with Kendall Jenner. Didn't you know that Pepsi is the only thing that is needed to solve racism? People lambasted them for that on social media, and they seem to recover okay. So don't be afraid of failure. And then finally have a plan. Back to that quote, where are we, where do we need to go, and how do we get there? Nothing is more disheartening than getting onto social media and posting, shouting into the void without a plan. So make sure you have a plan. You probably wouldn't undertake anything else at your job without a plan or without a final goal in mind. So just make sure you have that for social media as well. It's easy for it to become an afterthought. Social media takes time. Unfortunately, there's not really a way around that because it's typically a free platform. It's free to use. It takes time to engage people and get the results you want. So make sure that you're setting realistic goals for yourself and your organization. And if that is, we just want to kill it on Facebook and Twitter and we'll figure out Instagram next year, that's fine. Know thyself and know thy organization and know your audience. And I'm happy to take any questions at this point. I think we've still got about 25 minutes left. I'll just put my contact info up here as well. Please feel free to contact me with any follow-up questions. I'm based in Truckee. I'm usually down in Sacramento once a month. So let me know if you ever want to meet in person. I also want to give Sarah a massive kudos and huge thanks for letting me be a part of the webinar series. I'm truly honored that so many people are willing to listen to me for an hour. I also want to thank Sierra Camp as well for trusting me to speak on their behalf. I would highly encourage everyone to sign up for Sierra Camp's newsletter for an interesting and educational mix of content. And of course, follow us on Facebook.
Simone, you mentioned like copyright laws. Is there any like protocol for taking pictures of people and posting them without permission? Is that something that I should be careful about, or taking video of people and having people's faces who might not know that they're going to be on my Facebook content?
Yeah, there's a lot of wiggle room in there. Typically, if you are in a town building or at a public event, for example, a concert, a downtown, Main Street event, um, a lot of times it's either implicitly or explicitly implied um, that when you enter that area, you are allowing your image to be used. So a lot of concerts, before you go to concerts, you'll see like, by entering this area, you are allowing us to take pictures of you. You're allowing us to take video of you. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Be very, 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 very careful around minors. So anyone under the age of 18, if you're doing, for example, like a river cleanup, typically you'll have to sign, kids will have to sign like a waiver, like, if I fall in the river and bruise my knee, that's okay. You can also dovetail a media release into that. And what we've done in the past is, if we have somebody who's very explicit, like, I do not want a photo of my child to appear on your Facebook page, you can just wristband them. And once you see that like bright pink wristband, you'll realize like, oh, can't have that kid in the photo, which is fine. I would just, privacy laws are in flux at the moment, so I would absolutely be cognizant of it. Does that help answer your question, Sarah?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. And then I just got a correction. It's PictoChart, not Pictograph. I do apologize for that misstep. PictoChart is the handy dandy online designing tool. They have a free and a paid module, I believe. Can send out a link to that afterward.
Hi, Simone. This is Lizzie again.
Hi, Lizzie.
First, thank you for giving this awesome presentation. I
You're
definitely
welcome.
learned a lot. I have a question kind of on the topic of photos. I've heard conflicting information about having photos that like focus in on one thing versus like having a photo that's just like really beautiful and has a lot of elements going on, and I get kind of confused about, or like having one photo versus multiple photos. What's your opinion and experience with what kind of photos get the best reactions and kind of draw people's attention without getting, having them just skip through it?
Well, good photos. Good photography is always going to do better than crappy photography. We certainly get to a point where that's a matter of opinion. But if I show you a picture that I snapped of my dog on my phone versus, something that a photo that Jimmy Chin has taken, chances are Jimmy Chin's going to win every day. But I think it also depends on the platform that you're on. So, Instagram stories and Snapchat are going to be far more forgiving for less quality photography versus your Instagram feed and Facebook. Facebook photography tends to be really about high impact and more, think like photojournalism more than sort of like gorgeous imagery, which is what Instagram tends to lend itself toward. So, I mean, really, I guess it kind of depends on, look at your metrics, look at your Facebook metrics, look at if you're on Instagram and you have an Instagram business profile, which every organization should have. You have an insights tab in that app, and you can look at what photos are performing really well. For us, in my experience, sometimes like really gorgeous, like pro race photography would do really, really well. And then sometimes like the weirdest angle selfie of a guy in a helmet and sunglasses and a neon, bike kit would do really well as well. So it's kind of hit or miss, and it depends on how your audience reacts to it.
Great,
Does
thank you.
that non-answer answer your question, Lizzie?
It totally does, and I think that final point that you just made, it kind of depends, just makes me
Yeah.
think about the test, reevaluate, repeat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And remember, you can always pull stuff down too. I mean, if you post something and it just like doesn't go anywhere, you can pull it down. It's fine. I've definitely had Instagram posts where I put them up and after 2 days, the engagement on them is totally flat and I'll just pull them down and that's totally fine.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you, Simone.
You're welcome.
Hi, Simone. This is Addie Drinkwater. And I was wondering, are there any drawbacks to linking posts, such as creating a post on Instagram and then, say, linking it with Facebook?
Well, I think it comes down to, do you mean like posting through Instagram and co-posting it to Facebook? Is that what you're asking about?
Yeah, how you can like create a post on Instagram, then you can just like slide over where it says it's also going to share to Facebook as well.
Yeah, share it to Facebook. It really depends on the format and what it looks like. So the challenge with going straight from Instagram to Facebook or cross-posting across platforms is that their image ratios are different. Their text treatments are different. And so for example, you'll notice like Facebook posts tend to be a little bit more long tail. Instagram has started shortening Instagram captions to just like the first couple, I want to say it's like the first 30 characters. And then you have to expand it beyond that to if you want to see anything beyond that. Your content is always going to do better if it is customized for that platform. So if you have a really gorgeous photo that you're posting on Instagram, chances are it's going to get cut down to that square Instagram aspect ratio. And you can't actually link like a blog post directly in your Instagram caption. So I am an advocate, and when one of the reasons Sprout Social is so powerful, I'm an advocate for posting and customizing content for each platform. Instagram and Twitter, I think, play a little nicer together because their caption treatment is similar, and you can use hashtags pretty effectively across both platforms. So I would almost be a bigger fan of, from Instagram, you can go to Twitter easily, but if you're going to post to Facebook, just make sure it looks good. And if it doesn't look good, just post natively from within Facebook.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
I also got another question chat from Serena. What's the most effective way to gain followers? Serena, it depends on your platform, and it depends on really, I think it kind of depends on your platform, and I guess and the quality of the followers. Twitter and Facebook. Okay, Twitter, post constantly, follow everybody, use all the hashtags. Facebook, cross post a lot, and invite people constantly to like you on Facebook. And in your other channels, like in your email signature, put like a call to action, like us on Facebook. And you can do that in your email newsletter, post like us on Facebook. On Twitter, post like us on Facebook. On Facebook, post follow it. Did you know we have a Twitter feed? Follow us on Twitter. Here's our handle. Here's a link. So just, I mean, at a certain point, just like be obnoxious and put it everywhere. Does that help? I hope it does. Just by nature, Twitter is kind of obnoxious. I think a lot of people kind of wish that Twitter would just go away, but it's really, really valuable in political and kind of news and media spheres. It's really valuable and it's not going away. So yeah, on Twitter, it's fantastic. You can follow everybody. You can retweet everything. Just tweet like a mad person if you're trying to get more people on your Twitter feed. But keep your audience in mind. So if you're trying to get, environmentally conscious people, maybe don't tweet like, BP's stock prices unless it's like ironically. I hope that helps. Any other questions, gang? I'm happy to answer questions via email afterward as well.
Yeah, I've got one, Simone. This is Jamie Irvin, Sierra Forest Legacy. we're a small organization that just has a Facebook page, but I've been doing more paying for Facebook ads lately,
Hmm.
to try to share things like articles and just cool educational pieces. And I've noticed after those, our engagement goes way up, but
Yep.
also the number of like viciously negative Facebook comments on our page goes up like, you know, 100% or even more than that even. And you said somewhere in the talk that like, negative engagement isn't always bad, and it's good that more people are seeing that. But I guess I just wonder, like, is that productive over the long term? Like, if you do see just a really big rise in negative engagement on your page after paying for ads.
For sure, yeah. Well, Jamie, you bring up a good point. Brands and organizations, not people, are being less and less prioritized in people's content feeds. So Facebook is really shifting over to a pay-to-play model. So that, I mean, it's become part of our social media strategy here at Sierra Business Council, and I encourage everyone else to incorporate it into theirs as well. As far as that attention being less than positive, I think we could do two things. One, when you boost a post or when you're sharing paid, you can target what people you want to pay to put your post in front of. So I would recommend really targeting people that are going to be sympathetic to your cause and what you're trying to share. Jamie, what's kind of the nature? Is it negative comments like about the content that you're posting? Like, this is really crappy content, or is
No,
it?
no. It's well, just for this group. I mean, our organization does a lot of work to expand the use of prescribed fire in the
Okay.
Sierra. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
generally like articles about like the benefits of restoring fire.
Right.
And so we're an environmental group, and so the chain of comments just tends to be a bunch of like really negative stuff, slamming environmentalists,
Yeah.
and we've even gotten like threats for not controversial things, just for like, check out this cool article about this fire project that the Tahoe's doing, or something like that.
Yeah. Prescribed fire is a very hot button issue, and it's particularly interesting that you do get environmentalists on both sides. Um, I mean, you can go one of two ways. You can address it head on, and keep in mind, social media is a conversation, so you can address it head on, and you can say, you could even do something like you can do a Facebook Live video, where it's yourself or a representative of your organization sitting there and going, um, you know, we these are the negative comments that we get, and we recognize that this is indicative of the fact that there are more and more opportunities for education, and we're going to try to continue to educate anyone and everyone that wants to listen about prescribed fire. One tactic is to just address it head on and say, we understand that this is a hot button issue. We understand that it's a hot button issue because of these reasons, and we want to talk about that. And then you can turn that into an ask. If you're going to talk about it, let's talk about it, and let's refrain from death threats. Or anything along the lines of, we're going to come and blow up your building. Stuff like that, I think you can block. You can just block people. It's okay.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, that was helpful.
Okay. Any other questions? Sarah, how'd I do on time?
You're doing wonderfully. You still have 15 minutes in case there are any other questions.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to hang out. I'm going to mute myself for a minute while I blow my nose, because I'm still recovering from a cold, which I know everybody wants to know about. Yeah, like I said, I'll leave my contact info up there. And if anybody has any other questions, if you want to stick it in chat, I'm happy to look at it. Otherwise, I'm probably going to dip out and let everybody go early, just because I know it's kind of handy to have 15 minutes at the end of a webinar.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Simone, for being with us today and sharing your expertise in this area. I'll be following up to everyone who registered for the webinar with an email that will include a video recording of the webinar and any resources that Simone mentioned. You can send them my way, Simone, and I'll make sure they get out to everyone. And with that being said, if you are finished asking questions, you can leave. And if you have anything else, you're welcome to ask some last questions. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you being here and listening. So fantastic. Yeah. So Sarah, I've got a couple links that I'm happy that I'll shoot over to you after this with some context. And a couple of those links are to some social media management tools and some other tools that make it easier. And especially that the workbook as far as building out your audience personas is a really, really valuable thing. Encourage everyone to just take half an hour, sit down with a coffee or a cup of tea and read through it and at least start thinking about it. Having that direction is invaluable when you start thinking about your social media strategy and where you want to go with it. So trying to get everybody out of the habit of being there for the sake of being there. So cool. All righty. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen if that's okay.
Okay, great. And I think since I haven't heard from anyone, I'll go ahead and end the meeting. Thank you all again, and hopefully we'll see you at one of our next webinars.
Thanks, everybody.